There's a version of you that shows up differently depending on who's in the room, around women or close friends, or people who already know you well. You're probably pretty good, comfortable, even magnetic in the right moments. But put you in a room full of men you don't know yet, or around a group of guys who seem more established, more confident, more at ease in their own skin, and something shifts. A slight contraction, a recalibration downward, a version of you that's a little quieter, a little more careful, a little more focused on not saying the wrong thing and on actually connecting. Here's what's fascinating about that shift, and what social psychologists have documented but rarely explain in plain language, is almost nothing to do with your actual confidence, and everything to do with a specific wiring around male hierarchy that most men carry without ever examining it. And once you see it clearly, something in it begins to loosen. Today, we're going to look at what's actually happening beneath the surface when you feel less than solid around other men, and two specific practices that build the kind of genuine social confidence that doesn't require performance or status games, or pretending to be someone you're not. On the surface, you probably present fine. You function. You make conversation. Nobody in the room would look at you and think, that guy is struggling. But inside, there's sometimes this low-level monitoring happening. A part of you quietly scanning the room, assessing who's more successful, more assured, more physically commanding, more socially easy, and filing that information in a way that subtly adjusts how much space you decide you're allowed to take up. And the internal shift that follows is a hard one to admit. It's not just that you feel nervous. It's that around certain men, you feel like you have earned the right to be yourself. Like your natural way of being needs to be approved before it gets expressed. And underneath that, the question you probably never said out loud is whether there's something fundamentally less than about you that other men can somehow see, even when you can't name what it is. That question is not evidence of a deficiency. It is evidence of a wound that many men carry, and almost none of them talk about. Here is the belief structure that drives low confidence around other men, and it is so embedded in how most of us were socialized that it feels like reality rather than a story. It goes like this. Male spaces have a hierarchy. That hierarchy is real and legible, and your position in it is constantly being assessed and either confirmed or challenged by every interaction, which means every conversation with an unfamiliar man is, on some level, a test, and tests can be failed. That belief makes every social interaction with men feel, at a nervous system level, like a mildly threatening evaluation, not consciously, just as a background hum of mild vigilance that never fully turns off. The long-term cost of living inside that belief is not one dramatic thing. It's the slow accumulation of friendships that never quite deepened because you kept a little of yourself back. Professional relationships that stayed transactional because genuine ease never arrived. A social life that functions but never quite nourishes because you were too busy managing performance to actually show up inside it. And here's the thing that tends to arrive, slowly, as an uncomfortable recognition rather than a sudden revelation. The men who seem most naturally confident in social settings are almost never evaluating you the way you imagine. They are, almost universally, too absorbed in their own version of the same quiet self-monitoring to be rendering a verdict on you that you're so vigilantly preparing to receive. Everyone is more inside their own head than inside yours. That's not comforting advice. That's just true. And the anxiety, the careful self-editing, the slight smallness, it's costing you relationships, ease, and a quality of male friendship that is genuinely one of the most underrated sources of meaning and resilience in a man's life. That cost is real, and it is optional. So what actually builds it? Not fake it till you make it. Not a power pose in a bathroom mirror. Something with more substance than either of those. The first practice, and this one is the one I want to stay with, because it rewires the most fundamental thing. I call it the interest offensive, and it is a deliberate, consistent practice of becoming genuinely, visibly curious about the men around you before you've established any reason to be. Most men in unfamiliar social territory default to a kind of watchful neutrality, present but not quite initiated, waiting to see how the room calibrates before deciding how much of themselves to offer. And that waiting, however natural it feels, is actually the source of the disconnection. Because watchful neutrality reads, to everyone else in the room as mild disinterest, and mild disinterest is socially contagious in the worst possible way. The interest offensive looks like this. You walk into a room, or you sit down next to someone at a work event, or you find yourself in the parking lot after the gym talking to a guy you've seen 100 times but never really spoken to. And instead of waiting for the social temperature to tell you how to behave, you go first. You ask something specific. Not what do you do, but how'd you end up in that? Not you've been here before, but what's the best thing you've had here? Something that signals, I am actually interested in your answer, not as a social maneuver, as a human being who finds other human beings worth paying attention to. Feel what that does to your body when you practice it. The slight forward lean of genuine curiosity. The warmth in the chest that comes from moving towards something rather than defending against it. The sound of a real conversation beginning. The kind that doesn't have an agenda, just two people actually talking. And here's what happens when you do this consistently. You stop being assessed as someone trying to find their footing, and you start being experienced as someone who makes the room better. That shift from evaluated to valued is where social confidence actually lives, not in how you perform, in how you make others feel when you're present. Now, the second practice. This one requires something sharper. I call it the honest admission. And it means in a social moment where you would normally deflect or minimize or perform ease you don't feel, you say the true thing instead, with lightness, but with truth. Honestly, I'm terrible at small talk. Let's just skip ahead. Or, I don't know many people here, which is either awkward or an opportunity. Not sure yet. Something that drops the performance and just lands as a real person. This is the move that feels the most dangerous and creates the most connection. Because every man in that room who is also quietly managing their own performance will feel, in the moment you say the real thing, a kind of relief so immediate it almost reads as gratitude. You gave them permission to be real too. And that permission, in male social spaces where authenticity is chronically undervalued, is rarer and more powerful than almost anything else you could offer. Confidence isn't the absence of uncertainty. It's the willingness to be seen inside it. The man who practices these two things, who leads with genuine curiosity and who dares to say the honest thing, becomes someone other men actually want around. Not because he's the most impressive person in the room, because he's the most real one. And real, in a world full of performance, is magnetic. You have always had more to offer in those rooms than you were giving yourself permission to bring. That's not a small thing to finally understand.